Dear Atonement members, as you know, last December, the house on our property experienced a devastating fire. It was an abrupt ending to a long journey of finding a purpose for the house. We were on the cusp of opening it up as a sober house, hoping to provide a safe place for our neighbors who were getting back on their feet. In January, our insurance company representative walked through the house with John Fite, our current president at the time. We were given an initial settlement of $116,000 in March, which is the cost of the house without rebuilding. Should we decide as a congregation to rebuild, the insurance company would provide an additional $60,000 to hire a contractor who would then do the work. So the council has been in conversation about this for months, and originally we hoped that we could have a congregational meeting in May to talk about this and to work through all of the details. And then we hoped for early June, but the longer that COVID-19 continues to go, and it's not recommended that a large enough group for a quorum, for a really good congregational conversation, as long as that is discouraged, we're going to have to be creative because we need to make this decision together. So we decided that on June 7th, Sunday morning at 11 a.m., we're going to invite as many members as possible to join us on a virtual conversation via Zoom. Now, this is something that is accessible. You can click on a link that you will get on your email or copy and paste the link, and then you'll be a part of the conversation. You can even call in, and on the letter that is coming to you, you will see there's a phone number at the very end of the letter with the meeting ID and password to be able to punch in. After the meeting is done, and this won't be voting meeting, it's just a conversational meeting. After that meeting is done, we will encourage the confirmed active members of your household to send in ballots with what you choose, postmarked by Friday, June 12th, so that we can get back to our insurance company. But first, I really want us to think about the decision thoroughly. First of all, we acknowledge that this house was the very first meeting of atonement, that we have members still alive today who remember worshiping in that house before anything else was built. And then we rejoice at all the ways in which that building, that house, was used for many different ministries, anything from being a hospice house for Martin Luther Manor, to other ministries that came in and rented the space. And of course, we have adults today who remember as it was filled with youth, with their youth group, and how formative that was for their faith. Now, when I began my call at Atonement 4.5 years ago, the house was being rented by Zach, the music director at the time. He was living in it, and the basement was a music studio. But that fall, when he moved out, the house was just dormant. It was in need of a lot of work. Before anyone else could come in it, the house needed a lot of repairs. And so we began to actively pray hard as a council and to start to ask people for ideas of what this house could be used for. And there were a couple little ideas, but they kind of led to dead ends. There wasn't really a good follow through with that. We were also really hoping that someone would just come knocking on our door and say, "Hey, we're a nonprofit. Can we rent your space and do this?" And that never happened. Finally, a member brought forward the idea of a sober house, and we are excited to look into that possibility. So we all learn things from hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20, as they say, and I think we all underestimated the time and the energy that it was required to truly fix up the house, to research and to connect with experts on the sober house, and to lead that project through its first few ideas all the way to when we would have people come in and beyond. We cannot expect the people who found themselves participating in that work, we cannot expect that they want to continue and shoulder that responsibility should we rebuild and have that same mission again. If we are to rebuild the house, whatever project proposed is going to require a serious commitment from a small group of people who are not the council and not staff. That team would be responsible for the legwork, the research, the communication with staff, council, volunteers, recruiting, delegating, and follow through once the mission of the house is up and running. Without this clear mission and dedication from a group of volunteers, it is not reasonable to expect that rebuilding the house will bear any different fruits from what it has in the last 4 or 5 years. On top of this, in council, we've been discussing major property projects that are going to need to be done sooner than later. There are large projects that are not in our property budget and would normally require some major fundraising, which honestly makes us a little nervous at this point. Some examples are resurfacing the parking lot, and as well, you may realize that in the sanctuary at Atonement, in the hallways and in the auditorium, original to the building, we have asbestos tiles, which are warping and are cracking, and we've done our best to maintain them, but they are going to have to be replaced at some point. In some ways, it would be a blessing in disguise to be able to use the funds from the insurance payout for the house in order to begin the work without the stress of wondering where the money was going to come from. So as a council, we're asking you to think about the future of Atonement. We are a smaller church with a smaller budget, with a smaller staff and council, with less volunteers, but still a lot of life. And we want to make best decisions that reflect our current, present, and the future ministry, not just the past. So when we have this vote, we're proposing for you to vote on one of two plans. The first is to tear down the house, and knowing that what would happen with that is that funds from the insurance payout would then go to care for our property needs as they're identified in the future. We're not necessarily voting on how they'd be used. And the other thing is to vote to rebuild the house, but we're seriously asking that if you vote to rebuild the house, that you have a mission and a dedicated team of people who are going to do that work. So we will not accept ideas that assume that the commitment and the work will naturally come from council members and from staff or from some same group of volunteers who are already doing everything. If the house is going to be a mission for Atonement, we need Atonement members to step up and provide clear leadership for its future. And again, we've just learned this from experience, and we do not want to take advantage of burnt-out members who cannot afford to commit the amount of work truly needed to begin again. Now, we acknowledge this is an emotional issue because already in the midst of so much uncertainty and change in our world, it's tempting to want to hold on to what's familiar and sentimental. And we don't want to minimize any grief or loss over this house. It's real, and we want to hold all that in love and grace. Should we tear the house down, we will hold some kind of opportunity to say goodbye to the house. It was also proposed that we could use some of the brick or the wood from parts of the house to build something like an outdoor gazebo, a sitting area. And that's just one idea, but it's a beautiful way of how we would want to honor the legacy of the house in whatever new incarnation it may take. So that's why we're inviting you to the Zoom meeting on Sunday, June 11th. We want to give you all a chance to ask questions as well as to share memories and feelings. However, we do ask that if you choose to participate, that you do adhere to the following guidelines as we've used in the past. And a reminder of these guidelines: 1, to speak for yourself. Share from your own experience and perspective and avoid speaking on behalf of others. It's very tempting to say things like, well, a lot of people feel that ... We don't do that. We say, I feel sad, I feel excited, I feel this way. 2, we listen deeply. We suspend judgment because when it comes to emotional issues, it's easy for us to jump to conclusions about another person's motive if they don't agree with us. Which leads to 3, mutual respect. We assume the best in others. We assume everybody loves atonement. Everybody wants the best for atonement. Therefore, we don't name, call, or accuse or insult each other for voicing our feelings and opinions. 4th, brevity. This is a meeting that will hopefully have many voices, and we want to share honestly and thoughtfully, but respecting other people's right to speak in the confines of that meeting. So it would be unfair for anyone to go past a minute or two in sharing their thoughts without realizing other people need to talk. Lastly, confidentiality. We do not share other people's comments without first getting their permission. That involves within the meeting and outside of the meeting. We just want to be respectful of that, again, speaking for ourselves. By outlining these guidelines, we want to create a safe place for people to share thoughts and feelings and clarifying questions. If you have a mission for the house and a dedicated team who's willing to be in charge every step of the way, including in the future, you can propose this at our June 7th meeting. You can outlay the plan and the details and who has stepped forward. And then people can ask you questions about what that would look like. And we could then put it on the ballot as a valid voting option. So in conclusion, I want to thank you for all your loving actions in the past and now in regard to the house. At times, we have to make difficult decisions we'd rather not. And we all want what is best for Atonement's present and future ministry. So I look forward to talking with you in person on June 7th as we compassionately prepare to vote on the future of the house. Thank you.